The Astrius bucked and shuddered as it tore through the alien atmosphere of Zalera. Inside the cockpit, Commander John Hart gripped the armrests, his knuckles white against the blackened metal. The ship's instruments flickered erratically, and the whine of failing engines was drowned out by the deafening roar of atmospheric entry. Brace for impact. Hart's voice was sharp, a beacon of authority amidst the chaos. Outside, Zalera's emerald clouds swirled like an angry tempest. The lush, untamed world below was a mosaic of verdant canopies and shadowed ravines, a stark contrast to the cold steel of the Astrius. Hart could see only fragments of the planet's surface through the cockpit window. Each view a fleeting glimpse of an alien wilderness. The ship lurched violently as the landing gear struggled against the atmospheric drag. Sparks exploded from the control panels, sending acrid smoke billowing through the cockpit. The ship groaned as it crashed through the treetops, the impact jarring Hart and his crew, who were tossed like rag dolls. With a final, bone-rattling jolt, the Astrius skidded to a halt, its descent punctuated by the shattering of trees and a disorienting silence. The crew, dazed but alive, slowly recovered from the turbulence. Hart wiped the sweat from his brow and took a deep breath, the once familiar weight of command now bearing heavily on his shoulders. Status report. He barked, his voice cutting through the haze of disorientation. Around him, engineers and scientists scrambled, checking for injuries and assessing the damage. Sparks still flickered from damaged circuits, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt electronics. Commander, we're grounded, but not out, reported Lieutenant Jenna Brooks, her face smeared with soot. Engines are offline, and we've sustained hull breaches. We need to assess external damage before we can begin repairs. Hart nodded, his eyes scanning the fractured remains of the ship. Understood. Gather a team. We need to secure the perimeter and assess our situation. The crew moved swiftly, donning survival gear and arming themselves with energy rifles. They stepped into the dense underbrush of Zalera, the forest's alien beauty marred by the wreckage of their ship. Massive, bioluminescent flora illuminated their path, casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. The forest was unnaturally quiet, save for the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. The crew's senses were on high alert as they ventured further from the crash site. Suddenly, the tranquil silence was shattered by the sudden appearance of figures emerging from the shadows. The Zarin, tall and regal, their skin a deep, iridescent blue, stepped into view. They were armed, their eyes narrowing with suspicion. Leading them was High Counselor Nalia, her presence commanding and her gaze sharp. Halt. Nalia's voice was a commanding echo through the forest. State your purpose and intentions on Zalera. Hart stepped forward, trying to project calm despite the tension in his voice. I'm Commander John Hart of the Astrius. We've crash-landed here due to a malfunction. We need assistance to repair our ship and return home. Nalia's eyes, cold and assessing, flicked over the crew. Your presence here is a disturbance. Our isolation has protected us from countless threats. Why should we risk our safety for your convenience? Hart's heart raced. The stakes were high. We're not here to cause trouble. Our ship is damaged beyond immediate repair, and we are not equipped to defend ourselves against the unknown dangers of this planet. We seek only your help to repair our vessel and leave. Nalia's expression remained unreadable. She turned to her subordinates, her voice a low murmur that Hart could not quite catch. The Zarin's murmurs were filled with uncertainty, their eyes flickering between the crew and each other. After a tense silence, Nalia spoke again, her voice firm. You have 1 cycle to repair your ship and depart. If you fail to comply, we will be forced to take action to ensure our security. Hart nodded, trying to conceal his relief. Understood. We'll make every effort to be out of your way as quickly as possible. As the Zarin withdrew into the shadows, Hart returned to his crew, the weight of their predicament heavy on his shoulders. Their survival depended on their ability to repair their ship and navigate the treacherous political landscape of Zalera. The challenges ahead were daunting, but the hope of escape was their guiding star. the forest of Zalera held its breath as the Astria's crew set to work. Amidst the tangled underbrush and alien flora, their efforts to salvage and repair the damaged ship were a desperate race against time. The Zaren's warning loomed over them like a storm cloud, and every moment they spent on this hostile world seemed to draw them closer to a confrontation they were ill-prepared for. Commander Hart paced the perimeter of their makeshift repair zone, his gaze constantly scanning for any sign of trouble. The once thriving ecosystem now felt alien and foreboding, and the unfamiliar terrain seemed to close in around them. The Zaren had made it clear, their time was limited. "We've got a serious problem with the power core," Lieutenant Brooks reported. Her face illuminated by the dim glow of the diagnostic tools. "It's going to take more than a few quick fixes." Hart clenched his jaw. "We don't have the luxury of time. If we don't get this ship operational soon, we'll be at the mercy of the Zaren, and that's not a position I want to be in." Just as the tension seemed unbearable, a figure emerged from the shadows of the forest. It was Elia, a Zaren woman with a gentle demeanor that contrasted sharply with the stern faces of her kin. Her blue skin glowed softly in the dim light, and her eyes were filled with an expression of cautious empathy. "I heard you need help," Elia said, her voice soft but resolute. "I've come to offer my assistance." Hart's eyes narrowed. "Why should we trust you? How do we know you're not leading us into a trap?" Elia raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "I understand your suspicion. But my people, our people, are divided. I believe in progress and openness, not the isolationism that currently governs us. If I can help you, perhaps I can also help us." Hart studied her for a moment, weighing the risk versus the potential gain. "Very well. What can you do?" Elia stepped closer, her gaze drifting over the broken machinery. "I can access some of our advanced technology that you wouldn't normally be able to. It might just be enough to get your power core back online." With no other viable options, Hart nodded. "We'll need to keep this discreet. If the High Counselor finds out." "I understand," Elia interrupted. "Meet me at the old research station tonight. I can bring the equipment you need." As Elliot disappeared back into the forest, Hart gathered his crew and briefed them on the new development. The prospect of help, even from a potentially risky ally, was a glimmer of hope in their bleak situation. Nightfall descended quickly on Zalera, and the forest seemed to come alive with nocturnal sounds. The crew navigated the labyrinth of bioluminescent plants and shifting shadows as they made their way to the abandoned research station. The air was thick with a palpable tension, each rustle of the underbrush a reminder of their precarious position. The research station was a relic of a bygone era, its once sleek design now overgrown and partially in ruins. Elia was already there, waiting amidst the debris. She greeted them with a warm smile that contrasted starkly with the dilapidated surroundings. "Thank you for coming," she said as she led them inside. "The technology I've brought is experimental, but it's powerful." Inside the station, the crew worked quickly as Elia unveiled an assortment of advanced tools and devices. The atmosphere was a mix of hope and urgency, and for the first time since the crash, the crew felt a spark of optimism. Elia's assistance was crucial, and as she guided them through the process, she spoke in hushed tones. "The High Counselor is growing increasingly suspicious. You must be cautious. There are factions within our society who view outsiders with hostility." The crew worked tirelessly through the night, their efforts guided by Elia's expertise. With each passing hour, the power core began to stabilize, its dim hum a promise of potential salvation. As dawn approached, Hart looked around at his crew, their faces etched with exhaustion but also with a renewed sense of purpose. The repairs were progressing, but the real challenge lay ahead, navigating the treacherous political landscape of Zalera and ensuring their continued safety. Elia's parting words echoed in Hart's mind as they prepared to return to the crash site. "Remember, you're not just fighting for survival. You're also part of a larger struggle that could change the course of our history." Hart took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. They had taken a crucial step forward, but the road ahead was fraught with danger. With Elia's help, they had a chance, but the real test would be navigating the shifting allegiances of Zalera and securing their escape from this alien world. The early morning mist clung to the forest floor as the crew of the Astrius resumed their repair work. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and alien flora, and every rustle in the underbrush felt like a prelude to disaster. The night's covert operation had yielded some progress, but there was still much to be done. They were racing against the clock, and the shadow of Zaren's suspicion loomed larger with each passing hour. Commander Hart knew the stakes had risen. Elia's warning about the High Counselor's growing suspicion was not to be taken lightly. As he supervised the ongoing repairs, his thoughts were interrupted by the soft hiss of an incoming transmission. "Commander. You need to see this," Lieutenant Brooks said, her face illuminated by the flickering light of her console. Hart approached and peered at the screen. It was a video feed from one of the ship's external cameras. The image was grainy, but it clearly showed a group of Zaren, dressed in ceremonial robes, assembling outside the perimeter of their crash site. Their presence was ominous and deliberate. "What are they doing?" Hart muttered, his brow furrowed. Brooks shook her head. "I'm not sure, but it looks like they're preparing for something significant." Hart's mind raced. The Zaren were known for their complex social structures and deep-rooted traditions. If they were mobilizing, it could mean trouble, or worse. The sound of footsteps drew Hart's attention. Elia emerged from the forest, her expression grave. "Commander, I've heard disturbing news. There's been a major shift in the High Counselor's stance. A faction within our society, led by the traditionalists, has demanded your immediate expulsion." Hart's heart sank. "We don't have much time. What's the reason for this sudden hostility?" Elia's eyes were troubled. "The traditionalists fear that your presence could threaten their power. They believe that assisting you undermines our isolationist policies and will lead to further instability." Hart took a deep breath, the weight of their predicament settling heavily on his shoulders. "Then we need to act quickly. What can you do to help us?" Elia looked around, her gaze scanning the dense forest. "I can arrange a meeting with a sympathetic member of the council. It may not be much, but it could buy us time and provide a chance to sway the council's decision." Hart nodded. "Arrange the meeting. We'll need to keep our activities discreet. The last thing we need is a confrontation." As Elia hurried off to make the necessary arrangements, Hart turned his attention back to his crew. They worked diligently, their faces tense and focused. The tension in the air was almost tangible, and every sound seemed amplified in the quiet forest. A few hours later, as dusk began to fall, Elia returned with news. "The council member I've arranged the meeting with is willing to see you, but it must be in secret. We can't afford to draw any more attention." Hart and a small delegation of crew members followed Elia to a hidden enclave deep within the forest. The space was surprisingly serene, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing outside. A tall Zaren woman awaited them, her presence commanding respect. Her eyes, however, betrayed a hint of uncertainty. "This is Counselor Vaila," Elia introduced. "She's one of the more progressive voices on the council." Counselor Vaila's gaze was piercing as she studied Hart and his crew. "I understand you're in a difficult position. The traditionalists are formidable opponents, but we must find a way to navigate this situation." Hart nodded. "We appreciate your willingness to meet with us. Our immediate concern is repairing our ship and ensuring our safety. We don't wish to cause any further disruption." Vaila's expression softened slightly. "I've heard about the progressives among us who are advocating for change. However, the traditionalists are powerful, and their influence is not to be underestimated. If we're to make any headway, we must tread carefully." Elia stepped forward, her voice steady. "Counselor Vaila, what can we do to gain more support? We need a way to show the council that our presence could be beneficial, not detrimental." Vaila's gaze turned thoughtful. "You must demonstrate that your technology can offer mutual benefits. The traditionalists see it as a threat, but if you can show how it could enhance our capabilities and improve our situation, it might sway opinion. Hart considered her words carefully. We'll need to present a demonstration. If we can prove that our technology could be advantageous, it might turn the tide. As the meeting concluded, Hart and his crew returned to their crash site, their minds racing with strategies and plans. The task before them was daunting, but the glimmer of hope offered by Counselor Vaila's support was a beacon in their darkening world. Elia's role had become even more crucial. She had navigated the treacherous waters of Zarin politics and provided them with a lifeline. Now, it was up to Hart and his crew to prepare their demonstration and convince the Council of the benefits their technology could bring. The stakes were high, and the path ahead was fraught with challenges. As the shadows lengthened and the forest whispered around them, Hart knew that their next move would be pivotal. The balance of power on Zalera was shifting, and they were at the heart of a brewing storm. The forest was cloaked in twilight, a hush settling over the dense canopy as Commander Hart and his crew prepared for the most crucial demonstration of their mission. Their task was clear: showcase the technological marvels of the Astrius in a way that would shift the Zarin Council's perception from fear to fascination. The stakes were higher than ever, and every detail had to be flawless. Inside the makeshift repair bay, lights dimmed and screens flickered with final adjustments. Elia's help had been invaluable, but the progress was delicate. The Zarin, despite their initial curiosity, remained skeptical. Their society had long thrived on isolation, and the idea of integrating foreign technology was both foreign and frightening. Lieutenant Brooks, her fingers deftly moving over the controls, cast a worried glance at Hart. "Commander, everything is set for the demonstration. But if the Council doesn't see the immediate benefit, we might still face opposition." Hart's gaze was resolute. "We have one chance to make a lasting impression. We need to show them that our technology can complement theirs, not compete with it." The designated hour arrived, and Hart, Brooks, and a few key crew members gathered in a clearing that had been transformed into an improvised showcase area. The Zarin Council members, including Counselor Vaila, approached with cautious curiosity. Their eyes were sharp and discerning, the weight of their judgment palpable. Vaila gave Hart a nod, signaling that the demonstration could begin. The clearing was illuminated by the soft, pulsating light of the ship's exterior projectors, creating a surreal glow against the encroaching darkness. "Welcome, esteemed council members," Hart began, his voice steady despite the tension. "Tonight, we will present a demonstration of our technology, showcasing its potential benefits for your society." With a touch of a control panel, Brooks activated a holographic display. A 3D model of the Astrius appeared, its sleek lines and advanced systems projected into the air. The Zarin Council members exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of intrigue and skepticism. Hart continued, "Our ship is equipped with advanced energy shielding technology, capable of protecting against environmental hazards and hostile attacks. Allow me to demonstrate." He motioned to Brooks, who initiated a simulation of a hazardous environment. A force field materialized around the holographic model, repelling simulated projectiles and harsh weather conditions. The council members leaned closer, their eyes widening at the sight. Next, Hart switched to a different demonstration. "This is our energy transfer system, designed for efficient and sustainable power distribution. It can be adapted to enhance your existing infrastructure, providing a cleaner and more reliable energy source." A series of visualizations showed how the technology could integrate with Zarin systems, highlighting improvements in energy efficiency and reduced environmental impact. The Zarin's expressions shifted from skepticism to fascination as they watched the possibilities unfold. Counselor Vaila's gaze was particularly intense. She stepped forward, her voice carrying a note of cautious optimism. "This technology does show promise. But how can we be certain it won't disrupt our way of life?" Hart met her gaze with unwavering confidence. "Our goal is not to disrupt, but to collaborate. We believe that by working together, we can create a future where both our societies benefit. This is about mutual progress, not dominance." A murmur of agreement rippled through the council members. Vaila turned to her colleagues, engaging them in a hushed discussion. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Minutes felt like hours as the council deliberated. Hart and his crew waited with bated breath, the outcome of their mission hanging in the balance. Finally, Vaila approached, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the holographic display. The council has reached a decision, Vaila announced. We will endorse a trial integration of your technology with our systems. This will be a preliminary phase, allowing us to assess the benefits and ensure compatibility. A wave of relief washed over Hart and his crew. The path to cooperation was now open, though it was just the beginning. The Zarin Council's cautious approval was a significant step forward, but the challenges ahead were far from over. As the council members began to disperse, Elia joined Hart and his team, her eyes bright with a mix of triumph and exhaustion. You did it, Commander. The council's decision is a major victory. Hart nodded, his expression thoughtful. It's a start, but we have a lot of work ahead. We need to continue proving ourselves and building trust. The first stars began to twinkle in the sky as the night settled over the forest. The demonstration had been a success, but the journey was far from over. With the council's tentative support, the crew of the Astrius now had a chance to repair their ship and potentially forge a new alliance with the Zarin, as they returned to their makeshift base. The air was filled with a renewed sense of determination. The turning tide had begun, and with it, the promise of a future where collaboration could overcome isolation and fear.